faceoff. Shoots it, deflected, right in. Pietrangelo save, rebound. Stastny stopped by Pietrangelo. I don't believe that save. Neither does Peter Stastny. He can't believe the save that Pietrangelo just made on him as Frankie Sparkly. Now that maneuver there to stop and rob Peter Stastny. He should get 5 to 10 for that.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Tendy Talk. I am your host, Joe, better known as Washed Up Goalie on social media. This week I talked to InGoal Magazine founder, goalie coach, podcaster extraordinaire, and content creator, David Hutchison. But before I talk to David, let's take a quick break. So, David, thanks for joining me today. It's great to have you on. I've been listening to your podcast for quite a while now, so thanks for being on mine.
Well, thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so...
Do I refer to you as Mr. Washed Up, or do I use your regular name?
You can call me Joe.
Okay, Joe.
I've been called worse.
There's others out there who have pseudonyms, so I just want to be careful.
Yep. I know our buddy Goalie Gear Nerd, and
that's it, Mr.
the
Nerd, I
call
him.
They like to hide behind the mask, and I understand
okay.
why, and I'm all for it.
Yeah.
So this is probably gonna be a little different for you because you're usually the one doing the interrogating, asking all the questions.
Sometimes, yeah, I enjoy those. Although most weeks Millard just tosses me a grenade that I'm not ready for.
Yeah,
so
I was
it's
gonna
all
say,
good.
He's usually the one taking over the talk, but
yeah.
So I want to start out because every week on the InGoal podcast, for those that don't know, David is on the weekly InGoal Magazine podcast. If you haven't listened to it already, I'm not sure how you found my podcast first, because if you are a goalie, you need to be listening to the InGoal podcast religiously. I know I do. But one of the questions you guys always ask the other goalies is, how did you get started in hockey, and what drew you to goaltending?
Great one. Turnabout is fair play, as they say. So way back in the early 70s, I started playing hockey, about 1972.
Mm-hmm.
And I apparently this was in the days when they didn't even have glass all the way around the rinks. And as a 5-year-old, I understand that I used to sort of stop and talk to people in the crowd as the game was passing me by. And so I guess the coach wanted to find a better use of my I don't know, my energy, or maybe to restrain me somewhere on the ice. And I got home from school one day, and my mother said to me, "David, the coach called, and he's wondering if you'd like to try being a goalie." And apparently, I don't remember the moment myself because I was 5 or 6. I looked her in the eye and I said, "Oh, Mommy, it's what I've wanted my whole life." So it was a good moment, and that's what led me to goaltending. And that was actually the year that Ken Dryden came into the NHL as a rookie and was leading Montreal to a bit of a surprise Stanley Cup with an incredible performance, winning the Stanley Cup before he had a chance to win the Calder Trophy. And I still have a scrapbook full of cutouts from the newspaper of him and Tony Esposito. And so that sort of drew me to the position. And then like everybody else, it's, it's the gear, it's the masks, it's being the center of attention, while at the same time being all alone. Yeah, sort of a standard story.
Yeah, and back then you didn't have the danglers to have was it Millard picking on you for not wearing it?
Back then I had a fiberglass mask back then.
Yeah,
which my father painted to look like Dryden's for me.
I was fortunate enough, I started playing in a day when we had goalie masks, but my first one was a combo, but our association equipment was still from the 70s. So
oh yeah, probably still is in some places.
Yeah, so I remember taking those pads off after a game, and they were 10 pounds heavier than when the game started.
For sure. I still have my brown Cooper leather pads from 1982, I think. So
I wish I could have kept those pads from the association days, just
yeah,
for nostalgic reasons. Yeah.
Somehow I had a pair of pads from the association, gonna say 77-ish or something, that were blue and white. And I don't think anybody had colored gear then. So some goalie historian is going to have to tell me when they started doing that, because I feel like I must have been near the beginning.
Yeah, unless somebody painted them.
Yeah, I don't know. I know
Uh,
Johnny Bauer had a blue blocker at one point in the '60s, but I certainly wasn't common.
yeah, I'm trying to think of when. I mean, it was the '80s when you really started to see
For sure.
color on pads. You know, there's some of those old Oiler pictures of Grant Fuhr when he still has the fiberglass mask. He had some blue and white pads. And that was
Yeah, I remember
early
that.
'80s, late '70s. So it's probably around that time.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, no, it's a great part of the game, that's for sure.
yeah. So you started back when you were 5. You know, walk us a little bit through your hockey journey to help us
Oh,
understand that.
it's almost embarrassing to have one given what I do now, because I don't come close to anybody that I work with or get the pleasure of interacting with. But I played minor hockey, like most people, and eventually transferred to a school for high school that had a pretty solid program. And so played for my high school team and had a little bit of early success, and then ran into a bit of a roadblock, quite honestly, that I think were some of the best years of my life when I learned to love the game for the game and not for anything else.
Hmm.
I had the tiniest cup of coffee in Canadian university hockey at McGill University, when Mike Babcock was on the team, interestingly. And but it was a very tiny cup of coffee, and I was most solidly the fourth best goaltender there. Ahead of me was a guy who had just come from the Washington Capitals camp, another guy, a 4-year career in the Quebec Major Junior League, and another guy, John Elkin, who has gone on to become an NHL goalie coach, and we can at
Yep.
least swap a few stories. So I knew my career was pretty much done there from a competitive standpoint. And I actually hung him up for about 10 years and spent a little bit of time in the military, quite a bit of time in school studying sports science, and then came back to the game, I guess, in the sort of around 2000, and with a fresh set of eyes, and that's
I,
sort of my journey.
I don't know about you, but I my journey isn't all that different in that, you know, I played in high school and then I went to Division III college here in Minnesota, and I was a JV All-Star for 4 years. But
There you go. Well,
at
it's
some
better
point,
than me.
well, I like to say I had the fastest door in the MIAC. You know, but at some point you do realize, you know, your competitive days are nearing an end. And I don't know if you had the same situation that I did, but you you tend to enjoy the game more when you start to see that you accept it for what it is. You don't worry about every single save like you did before. It more becomes every single moment. And
And ironically, we probably would have played better had we felt that way much earlier.
yes,
You
exactly.
know.
And I know myself as I've done some coaching, I've tried to impart that wisdom, not just on the goaltenders, but the players themselves of, you know,
Hmm.
yeah, it's important to compete hard and put in the work and all of that. But, um, you know, in Phil Jackson's book, Sacred Hoops, it's the journey. It's not the destination. It's the journey, and you need to enjoy it. Um, and
Absolutely.
it's one of those things. So, you know, as anybody tuning in watching the video, they see that nice pair of CCM Axis pads in the back. And at InGoal, you guys get a lot of new equipment for testing. But thinking back to your playing days and the different sets you were able to wear, what was your favorite set growing up?
Oh, so you know, I didn't wear gear through that time when it got, when the early innovation came in. So I can't list all sorts of sets that people have enjoyed over the years. I mean, quite honestly, it is that set of Cooper GP 95s, I think they were, and they were the
Yep.
same ones that Dryden, my idol at the time, had worn at one point. I know that my parents made a massive sacrifice so that I could have those and play at a high level. Unlike today, those pads lasted me for about 5 years of playing, and then they're still here. My son doesn't get through a year in his sets, so it's certainly different. That's not speaking to the quality of the gear. It's so much better now,
Yep.
but things have changed. So that was definitely my favorite, both because I know what it meant to my parents and I know what it meant to me at the
Yeah.
time, because I was so proud to have that high level gear and be able to play well. So the gloves came separately for birthday and Christmas, I think, at various times. But the other one I still do remember, actually, is walking out on Christmas morning. Gonna say age 6, it might have been age 7, and Santa Claus had left a full set of gear for me. pads, blocker, trapper, fiberglass mask. This was the year I'm sure that I decided I wanted to be a goalie. And there was also a bike there for me that, I'm scratching my head at the time. That sort of convinced me there was a Santa Claus, because I knew there was no chance my parents could afford all that. Turns out it was the truth. They couldn't. Somebody else had helped make that happen. But I'll never forget that gear. And I think the joy of both those moments has made me very happy to be able to share some of that with my son now too.
Well, I was gonna say, as a parent now, you can just think back to that Christmas morning and imagine, how excited you were, but how fun it was for your parents to see the look on your face that morning too.
It's true, isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah.
because really, I don't get much joy out of buying something for myself anymore. But when it's my kids, no question.
And that's why the set I wear is 20 years old. I'm
Wow.
still wearing a set of Vaughn Legacies I bought in 1999, and it's not that I can't afford new stuff. It's just
Hmm.
it's a lot of money to spend on myself when my son needs a new baseball bat or my daughter
Oh,
needs
there you go.
more drawing markers. It's like
Yeah.
I don't need to. Although it's funny, I was at a skate last summer. Showed up early. A high school team was skating, and they needed another goalie. And they asked me if I would mind coming out, and I said sure. After I had the realization my pads were older than every player on the ice,
Yeah.
the other goalie were standing there watching the board, see what the next drill is going to be, and he looks behind at the back of my legs and he goes, "What's with all those straps?"
No kidding.
And I just started laughing. I said, "Well, buddy, there was a day when that's what you had to hold your pads on. There was no Velcro whatsoever." He's like, "You've got two of them going under your skates. Why do you do that?"
Oh, I remember when they came out with two. I was so jealous of the guys that had two bootstraps. I figured they
Yeah,
must be way better.
yeah. And now they don't even have a bootstrap. Think about that.
Nope.
you
No.
know, um, so I mentioned all of the different demo gear you guys get at InGoal, and
Hmm.
you guys do fantastic reviews of getting
Thank you.
goalies of all levels to test the stuff out. What do you guys do with that equipment when you're done? Does it go over to Cam at the hockey shop, or what
No.
happens to it?
Honestly, most of it is still there, or we use it for quite a long time in various demo guys that we have around here. Um, don't sell it. We're not looking to make money. Some companies want it back. Some
Hmm.
companies don't. Some give it to us for a certain amount of time, and some are happy to have us have it. We like to have it for at least 2 generations, so that when we do the next review, say, eFlex 4, we want to compare to eFlex 3.
Right.
It's amazing, no matter how much you know it, when you're actually writing the review, you want to have it in your hands and check the little details and things like that. So we do that, and then we keep guys in it quite a bit. I mean, there have been cases where um, some pretty prominent, I mean, I'm not NHL, but some Division One NCAA guys have actually switched gear companies because they couldn't get their gear from their team for various reasons, and borrowed some of the InGoal stuff and decided they loved it and switched. So I do think for the companies that leave it with us, we do our best to sort of help support their marketing through sharing the gear with as many guys as we can.
That's awesome. And you mentioned your son, he's
Yeah.
obviously somebody that gets to benefit from all of this gear testing as well. How does he like trying, uh, you know, brand A versus brand B? Because you talk to a lot of goalies and they're Vaughn guys, they're Bauer guys, or CCM guys. They don't like to switch, but your
Hmm.
son has that opportunity to try it all and get comfortable with it all.
He hasn't tried as much as you'd think. Because in the early days, he did, when we first started, he was testing
Hmm.
gear as sort of a 6-year-old, and developed a real ability to share some of this stuff with us, his thoughts in a really great way. um, then there were a lot of years when the gear that we get sent was never going to fit him.
Yep.
We always try and order it so that high level guys can test it, and which means nothing we order fits me, because I'm too short. I'm 5'8". Uh, my son is now tall enough. He's just coming up on 6'2" now, as a 14-year-old today, his birthday. Um, so he has been able to test some of it, but it's really been a short window. And in fact, my partner Kevin Woodley and I live a ferry ride away from each other. So quite often a test set will come to me and sort of live on the Vancouver Island where I am, and then the next set of whatever comes to Kevin over in Vancouver. And so it's not as simple as him trying everything. But that said, he enjoys it. I think he's settling into some things that he likes, but he also has learned to have a real open mind and not get too settled as a result.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give you an example. He thought that he was a pretty fixed CCM E-Flex guy. And last year when they came out with Access, they said, we'd really like Maddie to try this stuff. And I said, well, he loves his E-Flex, so I think he's probably going to go that way again this year. How about we send you a demo set for him to try? And so they sent him a demo set, and next thing you knew, he was wearing it in a Bantam AAA game and in a junior practice, and absolutely loved the stuff, and that the order went in. And so he's learned things that maybe he expects won't work for him suddenly do. And I think having that open mind has been a really, really good thing. And I've tried to bring that open mind to him with coaching as well. Did an article over at Premium all about that, where I think that you need to interact with as many coaches as you can, within reason, because everybody's got new things, or their own things. Everybody's got a different way of communicating. You can learn from all kinds of people. So I think open mind and gear, open mind and coaching have a similar sort of relationship.
You mentioned learning from everybody, and that's a key as a player and as a coach. But you've alluded to it at times on the podcast. By trade, you're a teacher.
Yeah.
What got you into teaching? Because this is kind of part of the podcast that I like, that I don't just focus on the goaltending, but it's,
cool.
kind of who are we when we take the mask off? How do we find that balance in life? How did you get into teaching, and, what subjects do you enjoy teaching?
Oh, okay, thanks. Well, first off, you're doing a great job of bringing that to the forefront, right? Who are we when we take the mask off? Because
Right.
quite often we feel we don't have the time to dig into some of those things. So thank you, and good on you for doing that. So goaltending brought me to teaching, to be honest. When I knew that I was sort of call it a mediocre athlete who wanted to be better, I actually studied a lot as a student in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that was studying sports science, how can I get bigger? How can I get stronger to play football? How can I become a better goaltender? That sort of stuff absolutely fascinated me. And I probably drove some of my goaltending partners crazy, because I'd come back from goalie school and I'd start teaching. Sorry, guys. But I love teaching for that reason. And for years, people were telling me, you should be a teacher. It's your thing. But I pursued other things, and those other things took me 13 years of university until I suddenly decided I'd be a teacher. So, my love of it sort of brought me back to it eventually. I was in grad school, actually at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs, and I was really liking the teaching side of that more than the research. And so, long story made long, I came back to teaching. So what do I like teaching? I went to a boarding school for my first teaching job here on Vancouver Island, called Shawnigan Lake School, which has a great hockey program now as well. Didn't at the time I was there. They had one, but didn't sort of have the same emphasis. And what I liked best was running a boarding house. I'll be perfectly honest with you, having 50 young men, grade 8 to grade 12, that suddenly became part of my family, and my kids were part of their family. And still in touch with a lot of those guys. Those relationships are the greatest thing ever. I'll cherish that time with those guys. So that was the best. But in terms of subject areas, I taught physics, a little bit of math, and computer science. And I love them all for various reasons. Computer science is probably the one I like the most, just because I love immersing myself in a problem and getting that feedback instantly. I think it's really exciting.
It's interesting. You mentioned something at the start where you started pestering your other goalies that you were playing with to learn more. And when I was in college, the goalie core we had, that's exactly what we did. We all were watching each other and giving each other pointers. And when I look back at the group we had there, and I just had this conversation with my college goalie coach on the previous episode, of that group, we were always going back and forth. And one of those goalies is Brian S., who runs Stevenair Goaltending here in Minnesota. And the
Okay.
other is David Rogalski, who is,
Right.
so it's like I look at the group of goalies we had there and the amount of knowledge we had, just between the pipes, and how none of us were threatened by the other. Did we all want to be in the net? Absolutely. But we
Hmm.
also took the time to ask questions to make ourselves better, but also if we saw something that we thought could help the other, pointed it out too. And we weren't threatened by that advice either. It was, oh, hey, thanks. Because
I think that's a great lesson for kids of all ages. You go to a goalie school, and some of the kids at a station will be zoned out. They don't want to be part of what's going on until I get to go in the net. And some guys are just laser focused on what they're seeing
yeah.
there. And there's an opportunity to learn by watching somebody else, and then flip that over. They say you never really learn something until you've taught it.
Mm-hmm.
And I can say that absolutely as a teacher, that if only I knew in high school what I know now, I think I'd be a much better student.
Yes.
I remember one teacher making the comment, somebody asked him if he'd read a particular book, and he said, "Read it? I haven't even taught it yet." So teaching helps us. It really does.
Yeah. And you mentioned teaching is how you really learn. And when I think back to that group, our school had a hockey camp every summer, and every one of us goalies worked that hockey camp. So it makes sense that we were into helping each other, not just
For sure. And I think,
competing.
we all think that we have a great feeling in our head or a great understanding. But then until you actually have to put it in words for another person, it gets a lot harder when you do that, doesn't it? And you're challenged yourself to really, why do I mean that? Why do I say that? What am I meaning by
Yeah.
it? So
Yeah. And, that makes me think of something. When we look at great athletes, Ted Williams,
yeah,
Wayne Gretzky, Michael Jordan, they haven't turned out to be great coaches because they don't know, they can just do it. They don't know how to think about it and do it. But then when we look at some of the really good goalie coaches for,
hmm,
Jimmy Waite, he was a marginal backup in the NHL, but is a pretty darn good goalie coach. Then you've got other guys like Francois Allaire and Mitch Korn and John Elkins who never made it, but
yeah,
they're some of the best
yeah.
coaches out there. It's interesting.
100%. I was on this morning interviewing Franz Jean, the goalie coach for Tampa Bay Lightning,
Yeah.
and exactly the same with him. In fact, I ran the numbers just for fun, and my memory is terrible, but it is over 50% of the goaltenders and the goaltending coaches in the National Hockey League never played in the National Hockey League.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another group there of guys who only played a handful of games, a very small handful. So yeah, there's something to that, isn't there? That willingness and desire to study the game, and really, in a sense, the guys who've made it as great coaches who played the game, say a Bill Ranford,
Mm-hmm.
that really, I think, speaks volumes about them. That they've taken that skill that they had, but been humble enough to know that they've still got so much to learn as well.
Yeah. I remember talking to an old high school coach of mine. He's a psychologist, and
Oh, okay.
he would pick me up for practice because he lived a few blocks away, and he joked that he almost wrote his dissertation on me. But
Be fun.
he was talking to me the one day about those marginal athletes that become very good coaches, and he said it's because during our playing days we have to focus so much and think so much about what we're doing, where that gifted athlete can just do it. They don't think about it. So
Absolutely.
when our playing days are over, we've done so much thinking about it already. We're much more gifted to teach somebody else and express how they should be doing it. Just because our bodies won't let us do it doesn't mean we don't know what's supposed to happen, is kind of how he put it out there
Well,
for
and
me.
I like to say, if only I knew then what I know now, maybe I would have made it. But
Yeah,
probably not.
right, exactly. So we've talked about your past as a teacher, but then there's this other elephant in the room, InGoal Magazine.
Hmm.
That was your brainchild. Where
Hmm.
did all of that come from? I remember finding it way back in its heyday. And I even wrote a story for you about Todd Miska many moons ago.
There you go. Yeah.
So
Yeah, I remember that.
where did this idea come from in the first place?
It was an evolution for sure. When I was teaching computer science at the boarding school, guys would come back to the house and they would have all these stories from their entrepreneurship teacher about making money on the internet. And the reality is, I had no idea what they were talking about. So I figured if I'm going to have an intelligent conversation with these guys around an area that I probably should know something about, I should be doing something online. And like, what is this blogging thing in reality? I wasn't setting out to make any money or anything at this. I just wanted to understand. But at the same time, I made this assumption, and it's the story of my hockey career, that I assumed things I probably shouldn't. I assumed that the goaltending and hockey were really well covered at the time, so I didn't do anything. I dabbled in a few little things online that I didn't even put my name behind because I was embarrassed about what I was dabbling in. And of course, they weren't what I was passionate about, so they didn't go anywhere, and I didn't last very long. And one day, I just said, okay, I guess I better do something about hockey because it is what I love. And I did a bunch of research, and really there was nothing, save for some of the bulletin boards, goalie store bulletin board. I remember. I don't remember finding much else at all.
No,
and
back in those
so
days,
I jumped in.
Yeah, back in those days, it was goalie's world and from the crease.
Exactly. So, and this is sort of 99-ish. Turns out Justin Goldman started the Goalie Guild, I think probably within weeks of me. We were probably going through the same experience, same time, and have swapped stories about that since, and I'm glad he did. So anyway, I dabbled in a few things, and I did some interviews like this with some guys because I didn't write content all that well, and I tried to model it after this site in rowing. Actually, I was a rowing coach at the time as well, and they had this cool site that's still up where you just follow the news every day. And reality is, I always hit a wall because there was too much to do. And one great lesson for me and for everybody, I think, is I had enough of a following that I could reach out and say, I can't keep this up. I need a little support if we're going to keep pushing forward here. And through that, I met a bunch of people who said maybe they want to write an article, a couple of great photographers who were happy to shoot for us. And through very good fortune, we're able to get passes to go into NHL rinks. I think that set us apart visually, that we could have our own licensed images. And one fun thing that happened along the way was that I realized my real passion was masks when I started. And the one piece we missed on the origin of David Hutchison's story, if you will, was back in grade 6. I've got a book still of some goalie mask art, and I would trace out these pictures and I would color them in with my pencil crayons, and I would sell them to other students at school for a dime each. Always had this love for goalie masks. And I realized in the early days of InGoal that sure, you could find lots online, but you really didn't see somebody say, look, goalie X here has a new lid, and here's the guy who painted it for him, or here's the woman who painted it for him. And so I reached out to a bunch of people, and I said, if you'd be willing to share your images with me and your story behind this, I'd be more than happy to share with the world that you're the person who did it. I really think, if we didn't start it, I think we grew that segment of the goalie world pretty early. And now, of course, they're everywhere. People doing the very same thing.
I remember going to the site every day looking for new masks during the off season.
Well, there you go. Awesome.
I remember that.
and I had a couple fun ones along the way as a result. One, I had coffee in Toronto with David Arrigo, who's a painter for a number of guys. He was painting for Carey Price at the time, still for Mike Smith. And Jason LaBarbera was with the Vancouver Canucks at the time. And David kindly offered to share images of the new mask and some sketches of where they came from and so on. And he did it before Barb's even got the mask. And my offer to him was that it would be much better story if I had it ahead of time so that I could have time to prepare it. And my promise was that I wouldn't share it until Barb's had seen it.
Yep. And
the promise was I'd get an email as soon as Barb's had seen it, because he had to be first, then I could publish it. And we were away, staying in a little cabin with no Wi-Fi. but watching the Canucks game. And I see Barb's on the bench. He was backing up that night, and there's the new mask sitting right beside him. I was like, oh, David, you didn't tell me. So I get in the car with the stories written, ready to publish, and I drove around a campground next door to us until I could find Wi-Fi somewhere, found it, hit publish. By the end of the game, literally hundreds and hundreds of people had found that story just by Google searching Jason LaBarbera, a new mask. And that told me people want this stuff.
Yep.
Thank you, Google, for sending them our way. And Barb's and I have swapped that story since. It's kind of fun. And there's countless other ones along those lines. But yeah, masks were the beginning. The other great mask one, I'm turning into Kevin Woodley here, talking and talking. Sorry, Kevin. The other great mask one, and just a fantastic time for us, was during Movember. And Justin Goldman, I know, did something similar when he got involved with Jonas Hiller doing a Movember mask, and we got involved with Tim Thomas.
Yep.
Got the idea, reached out to Tim, to his painter, Eye Candy Air, to the mask maker, and said, would you guys be willing to do something together, and then we'll auction it off? And Tim's agent got involved in the auction side of things. And wow, what a cool moment when you're watching Hockey Night in Canada and there's Tim Thomas wearing the mask that you had a little bit to do with making happen. So
yeah, and that was a great
so it was all
mask
masks
too.
But I haven't even given you that. I just slagged poor Woody, and I haven't even given you what really happened, because I said that's what got me going. But what got us where we are is during the Winter Olympics in 2010, I got this phone call from a guy named Kevin Woodley, who said, you're doing what I've always wanted to do, but I don't know how to do it. But I have experience, because he was the editor for the Goalie News, Ian Clark's Goalie News back in the day. And oh, by the way, I'm in the room and you're not. And because he was covering the Canucks at the time for the Associated Press, and then the Olympics for the Associated Press. And I didn't even hesitate. I didn't even think about it. I said, okay, we're partners, let's go. And that changed my life. And I'm forever thankful that Kevin reached out like that. And so during the Olympics, he started feeding me stories that wouldn't be of any interest to the mainstream media, but would be highly interesting to the goalie nerds out there, of which we are too.
And there's a lot of us.
And I don't know if you saw it, but during the Olympics, there was one particular save that Roberto Luongo made on the late Pavel Dimitra that saved the Olympics for Canada. If that puck goes in the net, Canada doesn't win a gold medal. They don't continue on. And the fun story that Kevin unearthed was that just before the Olympics, Luongo had been breaking in his new glove and found out that international rules say you can't have a one-piece cuff on your catching glove.
I remember that.
Don't even know if it's still true. I hope they've updated it since, because there's a real, safety benefit to the one-piece cuff in my mind. And when you look at the actual profile of Reebok's one-piece versus two-piece, the so-called cheater, it's not a cheater, extended a little bit higher on the on the two-piece glove. So he had a little bit more coverage as a result of the two-piece in that one particular place, and that's exactly where the puck hit Luongo's glove. So what a cool story that this fun little gear thing that nobody else in the world would care about except us goaltenders saved the Olympics for Canada. So that was the kind of thing that we published, and we're sort of away to the races since then, and we've been evolving for 10 years.
As you think back to the beginning, obviously InGoal has been a huge success, at least if you ask any goaltender anyway. Did you ever envision it becoming what it is today?
I'll give you two answers to that. So, honestly, to myself, the answer would be no, because that wasn't the goal, as I told you.
Yeah.
I was just looking for some fun and to be involved in the game at a different level. But then I had a fun laugh with my son the other day, because some of the guys who just won the Stanley Cup are being interviewed, and they say, "Oh, it's just a dream to have won. I never could have imagined that." And we looked at each other. Come on, every minor hockey player on the planet has dreamt of winning the Stanley Cup.
Yep.
Maybe not realistically, but of course it was a dream. And so, yeah, it would have been awesome if InGoal could have blown up into something massive at the time, but I never thought that it would. I was going to be a teacher forever, and that's fine.
What do you think has been the biggest obstacle in growing InGoal?
Wow, good question. Probably the two of us thinking that we need to do most of it ourselves. The fact that the people who do support us, like the extended InGoal family, if you will, are like us, family people. And we've all, including Kevin and myself, always said family comes first.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is really an extended hobby for all of us. And so that holds us back. I'm not Steve Jobs. I'm not going to work 17 hours a day and leave my family at the side. I recognize they've had some advantages because of this, but for us, I think that's held us all back.
Mm-hmm.
And then having people that share your vision and your, I don't want to say understanding of things, but just maybe doing it in a way that we're comfortable. It's
Mm-hmm.
hard to take that leap with a person. So uh, we don't really even have the time to grow things. It feels like all the time, because I could tell you five steps we probably should take to make InGoal bigger, better, and so on. But we're too busy getting out the next pro reads on a Monday, or the next podcast, or finding the next guest. And so, it's a challenge, but it's fun. And I always say, you take baby steps, you can still get a real long way. It just takes a bit longer. So
Yep, absolutely. It's funny, when I started this podcast, it started out about a year ago. I had the idea, and then I went, I don't know, because you guys had launched your podcast. Mike kind of had his out, and there were a few others I found, and I'm going, well, that niche is being filled right now. So what's my voice going to bring to the story that's not already being told? And kept
right.
kicking it around. And then finally, for Father's Day, my wife and kids got me the microphone and a book, and they said, do it. And so
Nice.
that's
That's
where it
awesome.
started. But then my brain went, well, it's not just firing up the computer. There's a lot more to it. So I had to learn that. And, you mentioned finding the next guest, finding the next stuff. That's the hardest thing, is keeping it
It is.
going.
It is.
It's fun to look back and see what we've done, but to keep it moving isn't the easiest thing either, because I think naturally as athletes, we're not content just going with the norm. We want things to continuously get better too.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
you know,
But you will achieve if you just keep going,
yep.
because you've seen so many people come into the space over the last decade, and they just, for whatever reason, it just doesn't continue.
Yeah.
And I think having that staying power says a lot. So good on you. Keep it going.
Yeah.
Keep it
Well,
going, because you have a unique voice.
I read the stat earlier this week that most podcasts don't make it past 14 episodes. So I'm getting really close to the 14th episode. I'm going
Right
to have a
on.
little, I'll probably crack open a beer after the 15th recording, just for that reason.
I wish this was the 15th.
Yeah, it's close. It's close.
That's awesome.
So you mentioned taking those baby steps, just keep moving forward. What aspirations do you have moving forward? I mean, you guys have added some great stuff this last year with the paid side of things, the pro reads. What do you see in the future moving forward?
I mean, more of the same. I think, as you say, you just want to keep getting better. I think in the interview with Franz Jean this morning, he said something I thought was really, really very wise. He said, it's really important to be content with where you are, and to be okay that that's where you belong, and to continue developing your skills in that environment. And if you do, the next opportunity will come along, but don't be looking over the horizon all the time for the next opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
which is something I've definitely been guilty of since I was probably 2 years old. I can't wait until tomorrow, and I don't get to enjoy today. So I think that actually speaks a lot to what we do, because we've really been only at the premium site, the paid membership site, for less than a year. We're
Mm-hmm.
probably 2 months away now from our 1 year anniversary. And so we got a lot to do to improve that, to grow that. Someday it will turn into an app, probably, unless, technology has changed again, because you have to be ready for that as well. I think we're going to continue improving the quality of everything we do. And, I know some of it isn't state-of-the-art video necessarily, or state-of-the-art audio, but but in our minds, who wouldn't be really happy to be in the room with an NHL goaltender? So even if we don't have the greatest, 4K video for a sit down with a guy, at least you're getting the sit down with the guy, and I think that's kind of cool.
Yep.
So yeah, just getting better.
I like it. I'm excited to see what happens.
I was going to say, unless, whoever's got great ideas, including you, Joe, just let us know and tell us where to go with it next. Podcast at InGoalMag.com.
Yeah.
just let us know. No, quite honestly, because you're often just guessing. An article does well and gets a lot of hits. I guess that's what people like. We know what we like, but is that what other people like?
Right.
We need to hear.
Hey, maybe you need to take a twist on the pro reads and go with the beer league reads.
Oh gosh,
those ridiculously broken plays. Yeah,
we need Kane Van Gate to be the guy that voiceovers all of those, because it would take some humor, I think.
His dry sense of humor just hits the point every time.
Absolutely, yeah, no, love that guy.
So you've mentioned your boy a couple times. So you're obviously not the only goalie in the house. How do you enjoy being the goalie parent instead of the goalie during games?
Now I love it. There's 3 goalies in the house. There's 4 of us. I tried desperately to get my daughter to play. Had no interest at all. She did appear in a photo in an early edition of InGoal Magazine when we had the old PDF sort of, flip book magazine. But that was as close as I could get. My wife played for a while.
Okay.
And she is a much more talented athlete than I am, and taller than I am. And we used to share gear. That will tell you something about how much you love a person if you can share stinky goalie gear. And that convinced me for sure that I'd made the right choice.
Yep. I knew my wife was a keeper on our first night dating. She knew every word to Slapshot.
Oh, there you go. That's perfect. A keeper.
Yeah.
Pardon the pun in my case. And yeah, now my son, he's a much, much better goalie than I ever was. And, at 14, as I said, he's pretty big, he's pretty talented, and had a lot of success so far, touch wood. And it's a great journey. And I can see him as a much more mature player than I ever was, a much more skilled player than I ever was. And it's just fun to see that journey for him. And yeah, for sure, there's some moments when you see him having a tough time out there, and it's heartbreaking. And it's, and I don't mean it's heartbreaking to see him let a goal in. I mean afterwards to see the effect on him, because he's so competitive.
And as a goalie, knowing the feelings he's going through.
Oh, exactly. And then you want to know, how can I help him? What can I do? And so it's been a real opportunity of growth for me as well. But yeah, it's super fun to be along for the ride. I've been fortunate that I've been able to be the goalie coach in all his teams as we've moved along, and I've been humble enough to know that I need to get him a lot of support besides me. And so there's some great coaches out there that have worked with him and helped him become the guy that he is now.
There's a lot of kids where if mom or dad tell them something, it kind of goes in one ear out the other, and they kind of think, oh, what do you know about it? But you can back it up. From listening to the podcast, it seems like he's very receptive. Have there been those instances where it's just the classic, Dad, what do you know?
You know what? It's funny you say that. No, not in recent years, for sure. I remember when he was quite young, asking him to do particular crease movement, probably something crazy simple, top of the crease and back to the next post or something. And I remember him looking at me, Dad, I know how to do it already. And not long after that, very, very near to that date, we went to France is the man of the day. I interviewed him this morning, and here he is coming up again. Franz invited me to the game day skate in Vancouver when Tampa was in town, and Maddie and I went. And in the Canucks portion of the practice, some work was going on with sort of the main group down at one end, and out skates Ryan Miller, all on his own, went down to the other end of the ice, all on his own, nobody in the zone, and started doing the very same crease movement pattern that I'd asked my son to do. I said, look, buddy, even the best do this, because they need to perfect their craft. And since then, we've seen countless examples. I love watching Carey Price work in Montreal in a game day skate, going through some of the most basic movements,
Hmm.
a very simple push, slide, gut trap. Stefan Waite, really believes in grooving these simple things so that they become automatic when you step onto the ice in a game. And so that was a great lesson for my son. And honestly, since then, I don't think so. Like we're really good buds, and I respect that he's more talented than I am. And I think I'm having just the tiniest experience of what an NHL goalie coach must do, because they know that their pupil is better than them.
Hmm.
And although my son's not at that level, and I'm not nearly at the level of an NHL goalie coach, I think that that comparison holds still. And so I'm really respectful of what he's experiencing, because he
Hmm.
gets it more than I do. He's a much better athlete. His powers of observation for these things are much better than me. He'll walk past a hockey game on TV. He doesn't really like to watch hockey games much. Highlights, it's what kids do now.
Yep.
He'll just walk by the TV and I'll go, "Oh, look, Hellebuck's got new pad straps today." Sorry, what? And then you look, and sure enough, something's changed. Oh, so and so got a new helmet. Really? And I'll text Kevin, "I think this happened." Really? Check with Maddie. Yep. Um, so yeah, I know he's way above me and all these things, but I think showing that respect, that's a leadership thing for people in anything, right? To be a leader, you have to show respect as well. So
Yep, absolutely. So, in the interest of time, I want to keep things moving. I'm
okay,
working on ending every episode asking the same 10 questions, kind of a rapid fire, first thing that comes to
perfect.
your mind. So, the first one is the craziest coaching moment you've seen in your playing or coaching days. I'm thinking, the a la Mike Keenan throwing sticks on the ice, just a
Oh,
good Tortorella rant, something like that.
oh my! I don't even know if. Oh, can we pause on that one and come back to it? You get to do that in game shows, right?
Yeah, you can come back.
Let's pause on that and come back to that one.
So the next one is a fun one that I think everybody's got that one right at the top of their head. Your favorite all-time goalie mask.
Yeah. It has to be Dryden's pretzel mask. Let's go back to the guy that got me into it. I think it's
Yep.
absolutely iconic in its design. It's the first one that I saw, probably. So absolutely love that one. And then if we had to go sort of into the painted realm, I'm going to go a little bit off the board here. And Kurt Ridley with the Vancouver Canucks. He had that Canucks logo crossed on the mask.
Yep.
I did not live in British Columbia at the time I fell in love with that helmet. I lived in Toronto. So it wasn't a team thing. I don't know what it was, but that was one of my favorite ones in grade 6 to sketch out and sell to my classmates.
I like it. What is your favorite rink that you've been able to play at? Because I think everybody has that one little barn that they just love.
Ah, I can, I like them all. Um, I mean, I guess it's got to be one that doesn't exist anymore, which is my old high school rink at Upper Canada College in Toronto. Um, I remember walking back into it a couple decades after I had played there, and just the smell of the place evoked all these memories.
Hmm.
And I don't know what that is, because I can't say as I had a ton of success on the ice there, but it was my happy place.
Yep.
And
I get that. Um, your favorite stick that you've used? For me, it's the Cooper Reactor 5, the old
wow,
Belfort pattern.
and again, because I had that 10-year period when things sort of got exciting, I can't give you a brand. I can remember unwrapping the first set of sticks I ever got where it was more than one. I got half a dozen at once, and it was really in the early days of sticks curving, and I can tell you it was black, and I think it was a Sherwood, but that's all I know. But just that moment was powerful for me.
Yep. So what was your favorite youth hockey memory? The one thing when you think back to youth hockey, that's what pops into your mind.
Hmm. I don't. Geez, a single memory from youth hockey that was great. I'm more of an experience guy, because
Hmm.
I remember, like I said, when I played in high school, we would go on these long bus trips, and they were fantastic. The camaraderie on the bus meant the world to me. I remember in youth hockey, I don't know why this one's sticking in my brain. It shouldn't be a favorite memory. I remember driving to a tournament with my family, and the heater in the car, no, with a friend's family, and the heater in the car died. And this is in Northern Ontario, dead of winter, and we had to get to this game, and I'm the goalie. And for whatever reason, my parents arrived later, and I can remember my dad coming in with a cup of hot chocolate, rubbing the heck out of my feet to get them warm. How's that a good memory from minor hockey? I don't know, but it really stands out for me.
Those are the things we remember, though.
Yeah.
Those goofy little things. So
Or stepping onto the ice the very first time in goalie skates.
Yes.
You
And
know, I was
almost falling
probably
flat on your
9 years
face.
old or something. Oh yeah, and then suddenly you have to learn how to walk again.
Yeah, and I've been skating in goalie skates so long, I don't think I could skate in forward skates again.
I almost fall on my face the couple times I've tried it.
Yeah, I've tried it once in the last 20 years, and it was actually last winter. We had one of those ice rains overnight that turned our streets into ice rinks. So I grabbed an old pair of forward skates and threw them on to skate in the street so I didn't ruin my goalie skate.
Yeah, you can wreck those ones. That's okay.
Yeah, I wasn't worried about them, but I was rocking a little bit. That's for sure.
Nice.
What's your favorite chirp that you've heard on the ice? Now, I preface this with most of the ones I've heard haven't been that anything is bad or it's just so out of the blue where everybody's like, what? Where did that come from? That's what I've noticed the best ones have been.
So shout out to Lucas Simpson at Magic Goaltending in Vancouver, BC. Hope you're listening, Lucas. In fact, I'll make sure I send a link of this to you. Is the best chirper for kids because it's all clean and good fun and gets the kids laughing too. We talked about having a chirp segment on InGoal led by Lucas. And one day after he'd scored a couple times on my son, he looked at him and he said, "Maddie, I bet you're really good at dodgeball." And he had several others after that, but that floored both of us.
That is great. Next one is, what's the worst post-game beer you've had?
Don't have many of those anymore. I can remember one particular can of beer that I had with my old team in down island from where I am, that one single can of it left me with a hangover. So yeah, it's called Lucky Beer here in British Columbia.
Boy.
Maybe the best though was winning a beer league championship, and we had a Japanese teammate who would bring in a giant bottle of sake to celebrate. So that was pretty awesome.
That's fun. When you tape your stick, do you go heel to toe or toe to heel?
Heel to toe for sure.
Okay.
I think my kid goes the other way just to be different.
Most goalies I've talked to have been heel to toe. I was talking to Connor Beaupre, the wild e-bug, and he's a toe to heel guy, but it was because the puck, he said, flows off of the stick better. He had
I love that reasoning.
Yeah.
I love reasoning. Yeah, for sure. I'm pretty sure my kid does the other way, and he'd be able to tell me which NHL guy influenced him to do it, but I can't remember.
Yep. When you play it, what's your favorite number?
I change it a lot. Yeah, I think, so's my kid whenever he gets a chance. Probably 29 because of Dryden, but I like changing.
Yep. And a lot of goalies these days are. And when I was talking to my college goalie coach, he had the question to me is, what happened to the traditional goalie numbers? Because you don't see them anymore.
Well, I've understood that teams are going to start running out of numbers because as they retire them and honor them and so on, Montreal especially, because they've got such a long and rich history. And there's only a couple of traditional goalie numbers, so it doesn't take long before you have to reach a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Now, the last question for the rapid fire, what advice do you have for young goalies?
What advice do I have for young goalies? Have fun and work hard and celebrate that you're working hard and celebrate the moment. It's definitely not about the wins, because how many goalies do we see on fantastic teams that get to win lots of games because of the team they're on? Mm-hmm. Celebrate the working hard, and whatever level you play. And this is advice I've had from other coaches and other goaltenders, whether it's minor hockey or major, junior, or NCAA, there's going to be guys on that team that are just there because I like to play hockey and have a good time. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be guys that sort of rise above that and set themselves above that in terms of their work ethic and passion for the game. And And if you want to make that next step, you have to be that guy. So don't try and be like everybody else. You have to be different. You have to be yourself, and you have to learn to love the game and work passionately for it. Nobody can do that for you, but if you do, in time, you can get to some great places.
That's great advice. Thinking back to my playing days, and I think I fell into that realm of I loved the game and just wanted to keep working harder and harder. I just didn't have the talent. So I got where I was despite my talent.
Okay, I got my coach rant on if we can go back.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it was my kid's coach, and I'm not going to name him, but I love the guy, and he was absolutely brilliant. He's so funny. I actually kept sort of a little journal of everything that he said, because I got to be a fly on the wall. And they had a home game, and he had decided that probably the guys were going to get all distracted by looking up into the stands at their girlfriends. I don't know that many of them had them at the time, but it became a fun, definitely sexist rant, but that's okay. Well, it's probably not okay, but for the purposes here, it's okay, because that's what you're looking for, is a funny rant. And he actually went to the whiteboard and said, I don't want you guys turning around, looking at the glass to wave at your girlfriend during this game, because no guy has ever seen their girlfriend. And he diagrams this spot on the wall. Walk up the stairs here, walk across the glass, walk down to the bench, grab your stick, go into the corner, dug a puck out for you to retrieve. And since she's not doing that during the game for you, she's no good to you till the game's over. So, and there were many other rants that were probably a little bit worse, but
yeah.
But man, he loved those kids and looked after them too. So
that's great.
Apologies to the ladies out there. I'm sure your boyfriends are also no good at digging out the puck for you.
Now, I forgot to ask earlier, because you mentioned you're on Vancouver Island. Have you had a chance to visit the Ultimate Hockey Fan Cave yet?
Shockingly, no. It's crazy. I know, and I don't even know why. We have been feet away from each other at Tendy Fest over in Vancouver, but I think sometimes, you're just head down and busy with what you're doing in life, and you don't. It's like I told you before, like the only way we're going to get better at what we do is if we have time to look up from the minutia of the day-to-day, getting things posted, so we can do the bigger picture stuff. And I haven't, so I need to, although I can't now because COVID and all that. Although we're very lucky where we are right now. Kids are at least able to play hockey and have some games now. But one day, Ultimate Hockey Fan Cave guys, I want to come down there.
No, I've met those fellows when they were at the Let's Play Hockey Expo here in Minnesota. So
okay, there you go. Yeah.
Oddly enough, I've had the chance to meet them, and you haven't.
Well, don't they say like you're never a tourist in your own town?
Yeah.
And I think you never look up and sort of smell the flowers and realize what a good place you're in. And
absolutely,
I'm guilty of that.
Absolutely. So one last question. It wouldn't be a good hockey podcast if there wasn't one last question.
Definitely not.
Where can people find you on social media?
You can barely find me because I don't have much to say, but you can find InGoal for sure. And we made a mistake in the early days, so the names aren't all the same. I think somebody had InGoal Mag for some reason already on Twitter, and I think he's got 0 followers and 0 posts. So we're InGoal Media on Twitter, and we're InGoal Mag on Instagram and Facebook. InGoal Magazine, just look it up. But really, everything can be found at ingoalmag.com. The front page of the website is open for everybody to see what we have, and on there you'll find links to the podcast. Would love people to listen to the podcast and to like it and to subscribe to it, as you should do for the Washed Up Goalie podcast as well, because I know it really means the world to all of us if you get out there and give a little rating and a subscription for us all, please.
Absolutely. And I'll be sure to have links to all of that in the show notes as well.
Thank you.
So David, thank you so much for taking time out of your day, especially on your son's birthday.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Hopefully there's some good cake or ice cream after this. And thank you again.
Thanks, Joe. I really enjoyed it. It was awesome.
What a great conversation that was with David. After listening to him almost every week on the InGoal podcast, I felt like we were old friends talking. If you haven't already, checked out the InGoal podcast and visit the website ingoalmag.com for all kinds of great goalie-related content, especially their new Pro Read segment. I'll have the links to his and InGoal's social presence and the website in the show notes. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Simply search for Washed Up Goalie and I'll pop up. Visit washedupgoalie.com for some great hockey-related content, my beer league hockey video highlights, and all podcast episodes. You can even get the schedule for my beer league hockey games if you want to show up. I need to give a big thank you to the hockey band The Zambonis for allowing me to use their music in my intros and outros. You can download their music on iTunes and listen to them wherever you stream your music. I just saw recently that they are recording a music video for an upcoming release. I'm working on lining up other goalies to talk to. If you're a goalie or have connections to a goalie who I should talk to, shoot me an email at washedupgoalie39@gmail.com or send me a DM on social media. Let's not forget, if you are a brand who wants to sponsor the show, be sure to reach out to me. I'll be happy to talk about options. And finally, if you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe, rate, and comment on the podcast platform you're listening on. It's a quick action on your part that helps others find Tendy Talk. Until next time, keep your stick on the ice and your body square to the puck.